Hey everybody, welcome to my Suburban Oasis. My name is Soleil and I garden in a Zone 5B in mid-Michigan. And I'm super excited to take you around the garden today. It's a beautiful day. We're going to have some showers over the next 3 or 4 days, so it's going to be kind of crazy. I do have some things I want to divide later on this season, actually as soon as possible. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get out in the rain and do it or not. Sometimes I like to do that. It's nice and cool and the plants recover really quickly. It's almost like you never divided them. So if I do that, I will also try to take you along with me. But tonight we're going to go on a garden walkabout and tour. So let's take a look at what's going on in the spring garden. Well, you guys, it is almost May and I can hardly believe that we have primroses blooming in May, but we do. And they are absolutely beautiful and they are super cute. All sorts of different colors in my little primrose alley here. And I love them. I'm super happy with them. I'm really glad that I planted more of them this year. And maybe we'll continue to add to the collection in little small spots around this garden bed. Over here you'll see that I have amassed quite a few plants. Many of these are from seeds and some of them are from buying. I have been to the garden center as well as Lowe's already this garden season. So we have some planting to do, that is for sure. And this is that dwarf cherry tree with its blossoms. We did get us some freezes over the last couple of days, overnight, actually I think 3 or 4 nights in a row. So the blossoms are a little worse for the wear. So I don't think we're going to get fruit this year, but I'm hopeful for next year because this is the first year that it did flower. This is starting to fill in with the ranunculus and the sedum, the hydrangea, and the bunnytail grass. And then I have lots of little plant pots around here that I am starting to grow on some seedlings. We have a garage sale and then I sell off some of the little transplants that I have to folks so that we can raise money for a charity. And over here we have some beautiful tulips. They came back this year. We don't have as many as we had last year, but they are still gorgeous. These are some of the Darwin hybrids and oftentimes they will come back for me. And this is either their 2nd or 3rd year, I cannot recall. I think it's their 3rd year. We have a superstar spirea here with this very dark maroon foliage, and I think it is absolutely beautiful. On the other side of the garden bed in the fountain area, we also have another one, and the Mugo pine is looking good. I'm always checking that out for pests this time of year because I think it's the European sawfly that likes to attack that one. So I look at it every year to try to find them before they start nibbling on those new candles. And we do have the fountain going now, so that is a wonderful thing. Now over here in this corner, you will see that the clematis is growing quite strongly. We have some buds on it. We have the beautiful spearmint heucheras and some of these daffodils just continuing to bloom. The hostas are also starting to come up right now. We have some autumn frost hostas back here, and we have some diamond lake hostas over here, or one actually, it's a fairly large one. And this show-off forsythia just blooming its head off right now. And the garden looks really pretty set off by the freshly mowed grass. My husband does a really nice job taking care of that for us. We have some nice new growth happening on the Japanese maples throughout the garden. The light is a little bit bright right now and a little bit shadowy, but hopefully we'll be able to see things well still. You can see we have beautiful tulips in the fountain garden bed along with some daffodils. Now I have my can-do hydrangea in this bed over here, and this one I just planted last fall, and I'm actually seeing some new growth starting to come out on the old wood, which is exciting because I rarely have that actually happen on hydrangeas in my area. This is supposed to be one of the hardiest and one of the best rebloomers, so we're giving it a go. Hopefully it will do well. Again, we have lots of blooms coming out on the clematis over here. And all of the roses are starting to leaf out really well. You can see the heucheras are starting to fill in some of that space that we made after we trimmed them back. And so those are going to fill in really nice and colorful. And I'm excited for that. We also have some muscari right along the edge of the fountain garden bed, and it is blooming really beautifully right now. I did come through and trim my false cypress, my mop head false cypress, so you'll see that those are trimmed back. And my limoncello barberries are pretty full and lush looking right now. And I actually do think that this opening day viburnum has come through the frost and freeze cycle pretty well. We will see, but there are buds all over this. I am super excited and hopeful that during this next week they're actually going to begin to open. You can also start to see some of the blooms opening on the sayuri lungwort back here, which is an all green variety, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. And then really also something that I'm happy to report is that my Eden climbing rose is pushing out a lot of new growth. So I never know exactly what to expect with this. I have not grown a climbing rose before, and this one's definitely done better over the last year than it did the year before. So hopefully we'll get lots more blossoms. Now you'll see we have a stem right here. This is actually what I believe is a little peach tree that has planted itself because the neighbor's peach tree is right above here. The animals eat it and then they bury the seeds. So I'm going to try and dig that out and hopefully plant that out in the way back, and we'll see if it takes, because I think that would be really fun. And I'd much rather that they eat the peaches and throw them down out there than they do in my garden. Also, it would be beautiful with the beautiful pink blooms that the peach trees have. So in this garden bed we have a false mop head cypress that I planted last year. It's not doing great. I did buy it on clearance and it was doing absolutely wonderful, but what happened was the groundhog dug a big hole by it, and that meant that it started to die off, and I didn't notice the hole for several weeks, at least that's what I'm thinking, and so that really got dried out and didn't do well at the end of the season. I did refill the hole, but I think that's the only reason why it's alive right now. What I think I'm going to do is replace that with this hydrangea, which is a quick fire hydrangea. So if I pull that out and just add a little bit more space and separation between that and the Fireside 9 bark, I think that will look really lovely. We do have some nice new growth coming out on this Trilogy Weigela, which has tri-colored blooms. So that one has recovered really nicely. I bought that one on clearance as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that really fills out this year, and hopefully we'll get some really beautiful blooms because we haven't had many on that yet so far. And that will be its second full year. And this beautiful barberry is starting to look super deep dark purple and a really nice contrast to all of the other colors around it. So I'm really happy with the way that the long border is looking right now. It's just filling out quite immensely. And then at the end of the long border, we have quite a few tulips. I planted lots of these last year. Some of them were from the year before, but they're just beginning to be fresh and perky and starting to open. Here's one down at the end that's beginning to really open. So I think those are going to be really, really beautiful. And right now the woodland garden is pretty stunning, I think, because we're starting to see so much more greenery come up. And we have not done any mulch in the backyard yet. We did finish the full front yard, so I'm looking forward to showing you that. But this one is yet to come. So I'm just going to come up front here to show you what the redbud looks like. I was hoping it would be in full bloom by now. It is not, but it is definitely starting to push some blooms out. And that is just thrilling to me. This is the first year, again, that I've gotten blooms on this tree after growing it from an itty bitty tiny stick that was a volunteer from my neighbor's garden. And then down here, the azalea started to bloom, but unfortunately, we lost quite a few of them due to the cold. So I don't think we're going to get many new blooms on this one other than the ones that have already bloomed. We'll see, but they really did get pretty fried. There's a few other buds that are on this plant. We have a lot of new growth on the espalier apple tree, and I'm thrilled about that because I wasn't sure how much growth we would get on this, given that it's in kind of a part shade area, so it's not the best conditions. I still have not pruned back this shrub right here, which is a honeysuckle shrub, and I really want to do that so that, you know, we can get a little bit more light to this apple tree. But I definitely see some buds on it, so I think we'll get some apples. I do think that the groundhog is going to try to eat all of them though, so we'll have to try to see if we can protect some of them. We have some euonymus that are those evergreen shrubs that have some beautiful golden tip foliage on them right now, and the pears are continuing to bloom really nicely, and you can just see the tips of the hostas that are starting to push through the ground right now. And they definitely did get a tinge of the frost and freeze over the last few days, but I think overall most of them are going to look pretty good. The phlox have really started pushing out of the ground. This is a fall blooming variety. This is the Laura phlox, and it is getting much taller, and all of the boxwoods are starting to put on that beautiful fresh coat of new growth across the top. We have another pocket of tulips right here, and these tulips are going to be so beautiful because we have quite a good patch right here. I can't wait to see those bloom. And right behind them with the bleeding hearts, that's going to be gorgeous. And then of course the Brunnera right here is starting to put out some of its beautiful little blue blooms. So while we're over here, I'm just going to pop over to look at the back garden, which I think is looking rather lovely. We've got quite a few little snowdrops back here, and hellebores, and some daffodils, and the vinca vines are growing nice and blue. Oh my goodness, everything's just looking great. And with the new rains that are coming, I think it's only going to continue to flesh out better. I will take you back there again soon. Right now I want to wait for some of the things to kind of grow on a little bit further, such as like the epimediums and the hellebores, because as they flesh out, I think they're going to look even more beautiful. So this is a soapwort, and it's doing really, really well. These can have a tendency to spread, so I'm hoping to move some of that into the way back garden this year. Now this particular bed, I did plant quite a few tulips in as well, so we have some lovely buds that are starting to really get ready to pop. And of course, we have the heaven scent that's just waiting to bloom. It's so close, you guys. Lots of daffodils along this border, and the heucheras are beginning to push out, as well as the roses in this garden. The foxglove are still looking really good. And this garden back here is starting to fill out with those geranium macrorrhizum. The hellebores are still hanging in there, and then we have lots of bleeding heart that are popping up in all sorts of places. Here's one that's got lots of flowers on it, and hopefully some of them have made it through the freeze so that we can get the beautiful blooms. We'll see also what happened with this dogwood soon. It's a little bit too soon to tell. Sometimes right after you've had the frost or the freeze, you just have to wait for some of that damage to show up a couple of days. But this area is still looking super pretty with all of these beautiful blooms and the lungwort. And I have found that either the rabbits or the groundhog actually do eat the flowers off of them. They haven't eaten all of them, but this is the first time, and this is the pretty and pink variety. So this is the only one that I have seen with the flowers eaten off so far. But just a heads up to those of you who garden with animals and you know, try to buy things that are fairly animal resistant. Here's a trillium, and you can see it's just starting to burst. This is a wildflower, and you know, growing up, I think this one was protected. I'm not sure if it still is or not, but I just feel really lucky to have that on my property. This was from my family property, and you can buy them. Actually, I saw some at my local nursery recently, and I'm actually kind of kicking myself for not buying some of them, but I just don't think the soil is quite good enough yet in my way back garden, and that is where I really would like to plant them for that woodland garden effect. Now you can start to see that we have some Hakona Chloe grass that's growing. It's really starting to spike through, and we'll have to kind of clean that up because it is starting to spread more. Every year it spreads just a little more, so it's kind of coming into the path a little bit. So we'll have to come through and clean that up. But isn't that a beautiful bright pop of color? When that comes up, it's going to be magnificent, and it really will stand out. We have more bleeding hearts over here. And the rhododendrons look like the buds are going to be okay, so we'll keep an eye out for those soon. Look at these pretty hellebores. These are the pink frost. They're definitely aged and have deepened over time. And all of the foliage on the Hoke leaf hydrangeas right now is just so pretty. I love that silvery green look that they have, and the witch hazel behind it has those same similar blooms. The vinca over here under this tree is starting to bloom, and it has gorgeous little blue blooms. I keep this in check by just having it in this encased circle, so this will spread quite vigorously if it is in an open area. The hellebores that I got at Home Depot that I planted are definitely doing well. Clearly something has dug a deep hole next to it, so we'll have to fill that in. I don't know if that was a bunny or not. But I have seen some baby bunnies around the garden. So not just mama bunny anymore, but also several babies. So those are definitely the ones that were back here in the rabbit's nest. You can see all that fuzzy little fur that's right there. And hopefully my foxgloves will continue to grow in this vinca. They're definitely getting a little bit encased in here, but I do think that they'll have enough vigor to push through. We've got lots of hostas that are starting to pop up, and you can see the rabbits started to get them as well as the frost. So we have come through, and I use the liquid fence pretty regularly to try to ensure that they don't eat all of my flowers. Now the half moon garden is looking rather good. It's still hanging in there. I thought I was going to lose the hyacinths in the freeze, but I did not. So I'm really happy with that. And these lady mantles that I planted last fall are looking quite lovely. I did plant some small starts of a, what was this? This is the Incredible hydrangea, and they're coming up really well. They're coming back, and then we have lots of new growth at the base, and I have a similar one on the other side that I did. And you can see the privets are just starting to leaf out really well. They're going to fill in quite quickly, I think. We've got a little bit of the creeping phlox along the bottom as well that's beginning to flower. Super pretty. And definitely not to be outdone is this beautiful little spring area over here where we have all of the daffodils, and the lungworts have started to bloom now. So we have this variety which has a very light blue that turns to a light pink. And again, I'm not quite sure what this variety is. I think it is the Trevi Fountain variety. But because it was given to me by a neighbor, I'm not absolutely positive. I'm quite surprised how long the blooms on these plum trees have lasted, but they really have. And they're so pretty. And as the leaves come out, that red is just looking absolutely lovely. And these Amber Jubilee 9 barks that I have one here, and then I have one in the potager garden. And they look super, super nice in the springtime with that pop of color. And then again in the fall, they look extra lovely. So yeah, everything is just filling in so nicely right now. And starting to green up. It's been awfully gray here, but with the green filling in, that has definitely helped. I had gone in the way back and seen that the deer had actually eaten down my crocus. So I went back there and I dug them all up. And I brought a whole bunch of them into this garden bed and I planted them. And wouldn't you know it, the rabbits or squirrels or whatever you have, it really like them. So you can see the remains of them back here. They dug them up and ate all of the bulbs. So the deer ate the top of them. I unplanted them, replanted them, and then whatever other creatures came through and they ate the rest of them. Oh well. In the potager garden, we continue to have some beautiful blooms on the Virginia here, right up in front of the iris, which are getting rather tall, and you can see we're still waiting on the blooms from the service berries, which will turn into yummy berries. All right, let's check out the front garden. So here we are on the west side of the house, and on the west side of the house we have a long bed, and then we have the brick bed in the middle here that we just made, and then we have the small bird bath bed. And this one looks really nice because we have the thalia dahlias now that are blooming. Isn't that pretty? Those thalia dahlias are just a really nice, simple white bloom. So crisp and clean. And they do make good cut flowers as well. And that's more of that Hokona Chloe grass. That's the all gold variety. And then here is the beautiful spirea. This is called Fire Gold. And I also think that the buds have made it through on this one. Time will tell, but there are buds all over it. So hopefully we'll get the gorgeous blooms that it should have in the spring. And we have our Firelight hydrangea right here, or not Firelight, this is another quick fire. And the geraniums are trying to cover it up a little bit there, but it should continue to grow on quite well. We have some more lungwort in this area and some beautiful burgundy glow ajuga. And then these little tiny stems are drumstick allium. And we have a few Virginia that I planted last year along the front of this border. This is going to be a snowball viburnum. We have the low growth sumac and another orange rocket barberry. And up here on my blue shadow fothergilla, you can start to see the buds forming on this. So we should be seeing some bottle brush flowers coming out soon. And what I did was I separated this bush out into 3 small shrubs this year. I think the only one that's not going to flower is this last smaller one. But it definitely looks like something came in and took some bites out of these. So hopefully this year as they grow on, they'll get bigger and have thick enough stems that that won't be the case anymore. Now in our little circle bed over here underneath of this maple tree, we have some pretty dianthus, and these are the Paint the Town Magenta variety, and we have some hostas throughout here and some garden phlox as well. But right now the daffodils are blooming and lighting this garden bed up. Now in the shade border we have some later blooming daffodils that are coming along. And I'm trying to remember, these are Sir Winston Churchill. They have a really, really lovely scent on them. They have multiple blooms on the stems. And they're just a little bit of a tinge of light yellowy orange along with that white. So those are really pretty, and we have some more that are coming through right here as well as here. And yeah, you can just see all the tips of the hostas now poking through that mulch, right? And we have bleeding heart in this garden bed as well. So we're gonna have those blooms coming up this week. And you can see how all of the new foliage on the hellebores is starting to really fill out as well. Here's a good example of a seed pod on a hellebore. And this is the Christmas rose variety. This is the Hellebore Niger. So these will actually just burst open and they will drop seed right next to the hellebore itself. So all of this is really starting to come up. We're starting to see some of the baby hellebores actually pop through, and I did harvest the teeny tiny ones that we had in here, some of those little seeds. I'm going to try to grow some of them on for the way back garden so we can continue to put them on the hills back there, because I think that's going to look nice. Now again, I'm kind of done fighting the stone mulch that is in the back here, and I'm just going to let this lamium spread because I think it's pretty, and it's also going to have some beautiful pink blooms coming on soon. So we'll just let it kind of cover over those rocks. It will be just fine there. We have some more daffodils here. The beautiful boxwood putting on some new growth, and then I just planted a nice little fern and a hosta that I took out of the garden for the front porch. And let's take a look real quick at the sunbed too, because it is still looking really pretty, you guys. And all the dianthus that I have planted along the edges, I don't know what it is about this extended cool season, but it seems really, really happy, and it's filling in really nicely. And we're gonna get, I think, some excellent blooms this year. But we also have all of these white daffodils that are just blooming their heads off right now and looking lovely. We're getting so close to some blooms on these alliums, but some of them look like, I'm not sure if we got the freeze damage on them or not. Almost all of the blooms are off of the weeping cherry now. So, you know, it does have a little bit of that tinge of pink and red on the bracts as the seeds start to set and the fruit begins to form, and the deer do love to come in and eat that fruit off the tree. We're finally starting to see a little bit of growth on the bobo hydrangeas as well in this garden bed. They are a little bit later to bud out than some of the other hydrangeas, so if you see that on yours, don't be too worried. And we're getting the, this is the Achillea, and some beautiful daisies, and more dianthus. So this is what it looks like after it blooms, which is still really, really pretty. I can't believe how long these apricot daffodils are lasting, the apricot whorl, but they definitely have lasted several weeks, which is pretty impressive. I don't know if it's just because it's been cooler than normal and so the blooms have lasted longer or what, but I definitely have enjoyed seeing them for as long as they have been around. We'll be seeing if these deutzia start to bloom as well. And then we have some of those Sir Winston Churchill daffodils up front here that have yet to bloom. But things are definitely growing on in this garden bed and filling out. And I think I'm going to give the boxwoods a really good trim this year because they're starting to encroach on the far side of this garden bed. So we'll give them a good cut back and a little bit of fertilizer and see how they do with that. Now over here in the long border, I actually plan to move this scallywag holly because if you can tell, it has been chomped on by the deer repeatedly, and I'm afraid it's not going to make it very well through the year if that continues despite our spraying. Now we do have some lovely buds on the blue muffin viburnums in this garden bed. So I think those are going to start to bloom soon. And if they bloom like they did last year alongside this elderberry, it sure will be amazing. That was a great show and a wonderful combination. I was pleasantly surprised by it. And you can see this blue fescue grass. It's called True Blue, I believe, and it is starting to look much less gray and much more blue as the fresh growth starts to push out and cover up the old dead foliage. I was also excited because I can finally really tell that some of my Gaura plants have come back, and those are hardy down to zone 6 and I'm in a zone 5B, so I was pushing the limit a bit with those. And I will admit that I don't believe the ones that I planted in this garden bed have come back. And I think it's because the soil is more dense and wet in this particular part of the garden bed, because it's not quite as raised up as the other one. This garden bed back here was made out of arborist wood chips and planted slightly above grade, and these are planted directly into the ground. Now the Louisa crabapple, look at the buds, you guys. Do you see all of those? Oh, they are stunning, and this deep pink, almost red right now. And they look kind of red just because of the double play doozy red spirea right here. The leaves on that just glow as well, and we have some peonies coming up around that. And then in this crabapple border, you'll see that we have those thalia daffodils, ooh, it's hard to say, blooming in this garden bed as well. And as those have come up, it has definitely added a little pop of bright spring color to this garden bed as well. Now our final garden bed over here, all of these boxwoods seem to be doing pretty well. I had a couple that were looking a little bit scraggly. They're across from the drain. And so what I did with these two, because they weren't growing quite as well as I like, is to just dig them up and lift them slightly. So kind of a good saying to remember is too high won't die, too low won't grow. So because they are directly across from this drain, they were getting extra moisture, so I thought I would raise them up a little bit and see how they do. Now they do have, you know, what looks like quite a few little buds on them of small new growth, but you can tell that they have been kind of struggling for a couple of years, and I'm hopeful that this will really make a difference for them. And then in this garden bed, you'll see we have our royal ferns are starting to come up. And these are those giant fiddleheads that they have that are covered in this fuzzy wrap this time of year. And that's next to this azalea, which is at the end of its bloom. It was a very short bloom period because of the freeze, but we see lots of that new growth that's coming on there. And then we do have buds on this snowball viburnum that look like they're doing okay still. And one exciting thing that I'm seeing this year that I hadn't noticed in past years is on my ice bog rosemary. Now this is not a rosemary plant, but that's what they call it, the iceberg rosemary, because it does look a bit like rosemary, and it's a very blue sage green, and it's getting ready to bloom, and it has these beautiful little pink flowers on it. And I actually saw some of these at Lowe's the other day when I was there, so I guess that's becoming more of a plant that is in their regular lineup, and it's a very beautiful plant and very easy to grow, and it stays rather compact, so a great one for areas with a bit more water. And this is a burning bush that is starting to put out its growth as well. So again, I think everything in the garden is looking pretty lovely, and I was happy to be able to walk through it today with you. Thank you so much for joining me today, you guys. I appreciate it every single time, and I hope you enjoyed this garden tour. We got to see a little bit of what's happening in the garden right now, what's blooming and thriving. And next time I expect it's going to be even better, because hey, we're going to get some rain and the temperatures are starting to look like they're going to warm up, and I have a feeling things are just going to fly forward from here. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Bye.